so that we can have an uninterrupted, interesting session.
Not very easy.
So before we begin, I would request the panel to please rise for a picture. So good afternoon, everyone. May I request everybody with a seat to take the seat, please? And we're so grateful to all of you to be standing here, and apologies for not being able to cater for more seats here. On behalf of Future Shift Labs, it is a privilege to welcome you to this session on legislators and the AI era, a continuation of the conversations we began through the AI Legislators Forum. I'm not going to take too much time in introducing what we're here to talk about. I will let Ujjwal do that. I will, however, introduce our esteemed moderator and panelists in the meantime. We are joined by Ujjwal Kumar. He is the founder of Quantum Alliance and Cognizy AI, joining us all the way from Harvard Kennedy School. Can we give him a big round of applause? We have with us Shri Krishna ji, who is Member of Parliament, Lok Sabha from Andhra Pradesh, a founding member of AI Legislators Forum, if I may add. Can we please give him a big round of applause? Joining us is Shri Raghav Chadda. He is Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and I think we have a lot of people gathered here to have a look at him.
That's the worst possible introduction to it.
It's the truth. I think Sir has garnered so much. He's right now at the helm of such important conversations happening in the Parliament, and we're very, very grateful to have you here with us. Moving on, we have Advocate Sarit Felber, who is Senior Director from the Ministry of Justice, Israel. And ma'am, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Can we please have a huge round of applause? Without further ado, I know we all want to hear what the panelists have to say today. Over to you, Ujjwal.
Thank you. Wow, it's full house. Definitely they want to see someone. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Power, Protection and Progress, Legislators in the AI era. 2017 and before, no one used to talk about artificial intelligence. That name, no one wanted to take. Speak with any academician, they'll say, no, it's deep learning, it's machine learning. Something happened after 2018. I don't know what happened, but a lot of people started talking about artificial intelligence. Generative AI, autonomous systems which can decide what to do on their own. Once Elon Musk told, bringing Gen AI is summoning the demon. Well, we all have summoned the demon. Stephen Hawking said, or actually warned, it's the biggest threat to humankind. Now, I think we are past some of these debates, and we are here to discuss what AI can do for good, or how we can use AI for good. I'm Ujjwal Kumar, co-founder of Cognizy, a public benefit corporation. Before that, I worked on digital transformation at UN Food and Agriculture Organization. with governments, with local communities, working on preserving local knowledge. I'm also coming from Harvard Kennedy School as Mason Fellow, which means I tend to look at technology less as a product problem, but more as a governance problem. Here is the frame I want to start with. Democracy, at its core, is an information system. It depends on what people want, what they experience, and what they want to express. And this information system translates it into governance. However, AI changes how information is shaped, amplified, and acted upon. AI transforms information. That's why we all are here. That makes it a democracy question more than a technology question. India developed Aadhaar, India developed UPI, showing the world how open source technology with sovereign identity can be applied at population scale. Now, I personally feel another layer to AI is a knowledge layer, which can be taken from highly skill-based people, either as artisans, farmers. How do we take that knowledge and not replace them, but augment their understanding, augment the humans' knowledge? At this time, I personally feel there are two ways AI is being developed. Either you are replacing human thinking or you're augmenting human thinking. And the best way to decide where we are going is this amazing panel. First, when I heard about this panel, I told, okay, like the first memory I got it from US Senate, when the senator was questioning Mark Zuckerberg, asking, oh, Mark, how do you make money? And Mark told, okay, we run ads. I think those memories keep coming to us multiple times when we talk about AI governance, because the challenge is technology is moving way faster than the people who are trying to legislate it. We already had a small intro, so I would like to directly get into some of our questions and try to figure out if legislators are ready to shape the AI governance process or they are being shaped by it. Starting from Krishnan sir, you have a CS degree. This week, you have been talking about social media restrictions. I was just wondering, do you think how important it is for the legislators to have the understanding of LLMs, the models, or it is the work of the institution to enable it for the legislators to work on that?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ujjwal. And good to see such a great gathering. Shows how much interest youngsters have in this new field of new technology of AI. And we mentioned about CS degree, coming from South India, coming from Andhra Pradesh. You cannot get by your parents without having an engineering degree, either engineer or doctor. So that is in the past. But the question that you were asking about how legislators need to understand LLMs, GPUs. I think more than that, more than the technical aspect. Say, for example, I give you a parallel with the nuclear energy. Legislators doesn't have to know about the fission, what what's the raw material that is used. That's not what. It's okay if they know it, but that's not the prerequisite. The prerequisite is how it's shaping the economy of the country, how it's empowering the youth of this country. In the same way with the artificial intelligence also, and it goes the same way. The data is being produced here, the amount of almost it shows like almost 20% of it is being produced here in India, but which companies are actually getting that valuation? Why those companies are getting valuation? The number of tokens that are being produced here, on what LLMs they're being produced, on what GPUs they're being produced, why only 3 companies are cornering this GPU infrastructure, whether that will impact the SONET. So on that level, if legislators know where the economy is going and how, in this aspect, how it can impact the country and how it can impact the next coming generation. Second thing is with regards to when you look at the AI, the technology that is available right now, there's already a huge difference in India with learning outcomes. If you see the number of people using the internet, or the students that have access to the internet not having access to the internet. Add to that now, when you give few set of people access to good AI apps, whereas you leave out 90% of them out of it, see the difference, the vast difference that is going to make in the opportunities for the people, opportunities for the next generation. So these are the things that as legislators we need to think about, not just going into the code, not understanding and not trying to understand the LLMs, those things. So that is one thing. Second thing is you asked about the social media bans here. I'm not talking about social media ban per se, but I'm talking about social media restrictions for the age group until 16. Again, it's the same thing. We are producing, if you've seen the data also, YouTube, Facebooks, or Instagram, majority of the data is being produced from India. And, where the valuation is going, what these companies are bringing back to the country. These are the things that we need to look at it, and whether we are going to pawn the teenagers' childhood versus what these companies are looking for from the data of these youngsters. So these are the arguments I think we need to have as legislators.
Thank you. You touched upon sovereign AI, which I was hoping to get a bit later, but amazing you touched that. So I'll go to Raghavji. Like, you spoke about India having 34,000 GPU in Rajya Sabha, and you told it's not a talent problem, it's not a capital problem, it's a compute problem. So my colleague at Harvard, Professor Bruce Nair, he says AI is an amplifier. It enhances whoever uses it. If democracy uses it, it enhances democracy. If it goes in the hands which is we don't want to, it enhances that also. And when we speak about GPU, as Krishnan also mentioned, there are only few companies who control GPUs. How do you look at it as a supply chain problem or an institutional problem?
Look, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this panel. I think AI summit that's happening in New Delhi from the 16th of Feb to the 20th of Feb certainly puts India on the map when it comes to the conversation around AI and building AI in that sense. To answer your question, I did raise that question in Parliament about GPUs and the lack of GPUs when it comes to India's compute capacity. Now, I didn't raise that to sound technical, I raised that question to sound practical. Today, whichever country has the compute capacity is going to rule the roost, is going to have governance efficiency, is going to have military capability, is going to have more and more economic prosperity. So this compute capacity, which has today become a supply chain issue, but at the very heart of it is a sovereign issue. It is not a supply chain issue to my mind. Now, why do I say that it is a sovereign issue, or it is an issue of strategic autonomy and less of an issue of supply chain? Is simply because there is a monopoly today that exists in the world of AI. When I say monopoly, I mean three things: design, manufacturing, and export. Design almost entirely is controlled by a few select companies like NVIDIA that have had the first mover advantage, whose chips and GPUs, etc., and the design architecture is being used effectively by virtually all LLMs, generative AI models, so on and so forth. So even if there is a new company that comes about, the resistance to change or to move from the NVIDIA chips to any other company's chip is going to be huge. So they have a design advantage or a design monopoly. The second is the manufacturing monopoly. 90% of the chips today are being manufactured by a company sitting in Taiwan, the TSMC, that manufactures 90% of the world's chips. So therefore they, in that sense, have the monopoly. And third is the export controls, which countries like the United States of America have imposed. And they have effectively classified the GPUs and the chips, so on and so forth, and this entire AI architecture as a strategic asset for the country. So therefore, even if you have the money to buy these chips, you cannot buy these chips merely because the United States has imposed sanctions or export controls in that sense, right? So three things: design monopoly, manufacturing monopoly, and third is the export control. Now, unfortunately, as we stand today, India doesn't have any of the three. But what India has is the AI talent. Our AI talent is likely to double by the year 2027. We are world number one when it comes to AI skill penetration. And in that sense, when it comes to talent, it is India that the world looks up to. But talent alone, without compute, in my view, is merely an aspiration, right? And compute without sovereignty will lead to India's dependence on some supply chain, on some country, on some geopolitical relationship. So therefore, it is important that India today, and legislators like Krishna and myself today, work towards, from an India standpoint, building milestones to secure access at the first level, to have clear-cut direct goals so that India has access to the AI ecosystem. The second is diversifying supply. Once we have access, we must diversify our supply so that we are not dependent merely on one or two, three economies or countries in that sense. And the third thing that we must do is build infra. Have the AI ecosystem here in India, from having data centers to chip manufacturing capabilities, so on and so forth. I fundamentally believe, and I quite strongly hold this view, that in the 20th century, power was controlled by those who had oil, gas, and steel. In the 21st century, power will be controlled by those who have access and AI compute capability, AI capability, as well as chip manufacturing abilities. Whosoever controls this will effectively control the levers of power in the 21st century.
Thank you. Picking up from talent and some of the regulation aspect, one study which I've seen recently is about AI tools, which it's an irony that we are sitting here also trying to discuss, regulate the tools aspect. AI tools is also helping legislators in making better laws, doing better analysis. I would like to ask Ms. Felber if Israel has done any experimentation in this space.
So, hello everybody. Thank you for having me on this panel with this distinguished guest. I'm truly privileged and honored. And thank you for all the audience that came. I think when you opened, the opening remarks was AI should not replace us but augment us. And I think it's a very, it's a very challenging to make this line. It's very convenient to rely on AI sometimes. From the small things to the big things. So I think every experimentation we do with getting AI into government, into parliament, should be in small measures. I work in the Ministry of Justice. We work a lot. I come to the parliament a lot to speak about legislation, and I'm not a politician. But I truly appreciate discussion. But I understand that there's politics involved. But it's very important that when we get to Parliament with new policy to introduce and to get politicians to support it, we'll come with evidence-based, we'll come with a strategic why we're doing what we're doing. To be honest, I don't think it's time to, it's time that legislators, we use AI in an extensive way. It should support the work. It should support the work we're doing. I think we in Israel, we say artificial intelligence needs human trust. If we'll move too fast towards AI, I'm afraid that the trust in AI and in Parliament might reduce, and it's not as high already, right? People. No offense, of course, have some kind of suspicions toward politicians. So if we'll move too fast and not in a measured way, I'm truly afraid that it will harm the trust, and in the long run, will make AI, like the penetration of AI into civil service slower. We have this term that we call it in Hebrew. I don't know if it translates well to English. We call it winter of regulation. Okay, when something happens and regulator failed, for example, it can be in transportation, it can be in food, and there is a crisis, all of a sudden everyone runs towards like more regulation, more severe like punishments on everything. Not because we need it, just because we're afraid of it, and that stifles innovation at the end. So I think that in order to in a year or two have AI in our government, in our parliament, it's worth the wait and do it in a more measured and responsible way.
Thank you. I have a follow-up to you, if it's okay. So I saw something very bold from your government publishing an opinion that copyright material can be used for training AI data. Could you please give more light on that? And because when you speak about trust, how do you think the people can connect with that trust part if that's the case?
So to give context, there was a legal opinion from the Ministry of Justice saying that when AI trains on other people's creation, it's considered fair use. Because it's considered fair use, it's allowed. It's not a violation or a breach of IP law. Israel was quite a pioneer in this legal opinion. It was, you said people were started talking about AI in 2018, right? This opinion is from 2020, so you can assume it's quite early. I think that was it's not a legislation. It's a legal opinion translating the Israeli legislation. So that's one thing. If the legislator would want to change the ballast that the legal opinion has set, they can do that. I think it sent a message, right? It sent a message that Israel wants to innovate. In order to innovate these models, and I totally agree with what was said here earlier, we don't need to rely only on foreign companies. We have to have our own companies. And once this legal opinion came to air, it meant that Israeli companies can train on data in certain restrictions, because it has to be within the fair use. And I think in terms of public trust, I think when you communicate this legal opinion, not as yes, we want to steal creation of other people and not pay for it, but we want to balance between innovation and IP law. That is how we see the balance at the moment. I don't know in 2 or 3 years if LLM will be even more prominent. Maybe we should change that balance. That's a question, but I want to say that's not a question. That's a question for parliament members. They have to choose the right balance between artists, writers, and innovation. Yeah, that's AI. I think raises raises a question that not all will find an answer in the law book. It will find answer with legislators that will have to choose which direction are they going. How do we balance values? And I think that's also one way for the public trust.
Thank you. It goes back to like something which I said earlier, that I personally believe, again I'll repeat that because it's important, that the way AI is being developed, I see two ways. One is replacing human reasoning, human powers. Exactly. And second one is like, how do you augment the human learning? So yeah, thank you for that. Coming to Krishna sir, going deeper in your proposal, the bill which you are talking about, levying hefty penalties to the companies who are not able to save the children, if I am getting it correctly. How do you think those are global companies we are talking about? Like, let's be frank here, like global companies we are talking about. How do you think a national legislator stand a chance through? Is the law, or do you think is the capacity which is built that you will be able to enforce that?
Yeah, they are global companies. I'm sure most of you who are into tech space must have gone through the Epic Games versus App Store case, which was there in US for so many years. If you've gone through the history, they found ways to evade it. Even in India, CCI has a few startups have approached CCI saying App Store and on the Android as well as the iPhone, we have these problems. When they went to CCI, CCI levied penalties on the app stores, but they threw lawyers at them and still they haven't paid it. Obviously, there are problems. Obviously, we know what we are up against. And of course, they have a lot of lawyer power behind them. Maybe people like Raghav also, not on the legislative side, but as a lawyer. You must be an accountant, right? Not a lawyer. Chartered accountant, sorry to get it wrong. So there are a lot of power behind them in that sense. But at the same time, why we are proposing that, this has been in works for the last 5-6 months. We have been talking about it, about restriction, age restriction for the social media. The reason being that if you've seen how much the time that is being spent by the children, 14-year, 15-year, 16-year-old children, even the other, a couple of weeks back, you must have seen the incident that has happened in Ghaziabad also, the effect that it had. So not just the time that is being wasted, at the same, more than that, the conference, there are studies that say that the children are not even making the eye contact with others when they're talking. These are the side effects of over-utilization of social media. Obviously, do you think we need this legislation? If you say tobacco is there, smoking is there, whether you want to give the choice to the children to choose it or not, no, we're going to say no. Because most of these social media apps are developed in such a way they're very much addictive. It's not just from India that's I'm saying it. Even in the US, I think last week they called all of these people to depose before them, all the social media platforms to depose before them what evils or what wrongdoings that is been happening. So there's a reason why we are proposing that, and there are enough evidence that is there which is causing a lot of pain to a lot of not only parents, for the children also. So I think we know what we are up against. More than the legislation, it's more about the will to actually not just passing the law, but making sure it's get implemented. That is the most important thing that is there. Because most of the times, even if you lay penalties are there. I've given the example of CCI. They're there, but how can you implement it? How can you get them to the table, negotiate on our terms? And if we can do it with TikTok, why can't we do it with others? That's the question that I have. Thank you.
Interesting. Any quick comments, Raghav, on the same bill?
I have one quick comment to make on the argument made by our colleague from Israel about the copyright issue and how the government has come out with a legal opinion, right? That effectively frees up this space and effectively defines fair use. Interestingly enough, last session of Parliament, I raised this issue during my 0-hour intervention in Rajya Sabha. And I did refer to the exact same thing, and I said that, look, today there are content creators, there are coders, there are innovators who are doing their own innovation, creating their own original content. However, for educational purposes or for any other purpose, they are using already published content, code, etc. in a very limited way in order to either comment on it or from an educational point of view use it, and that must fall under the definition of fair use. Now, India's Copyright Act goes back to late 50s or early 60s, if my memory serves me right. At that point in time, fair use is defined. But fair use is defined vis-a-vis the medium that was available or the sources of information dissemination that were available in the 50s. For example, fair use vis-a-vis journals, magazines, newspaper, published articles, so on and so forth. But the definition of fair use in the 21st century, in the year of 2025-26 doesn't exist. So therefore, as a result, whether it's innovators, coders, digital content creators, all of them in that sense are suffering because of a lack of clarity when it comes to fair use. So therefore, while we need to respect the original content creator or the original coder or the person who holds the IP, but at the same time we must permit fair use and strike a balance between the two, because if you do not enable fair use, you are curtailing innovation in that sense. And something what the Israelis have done is worth noting. And I think hopefully in India we will have either a regulation or an amendment to the Indian Copyright Act, and perhaps fair use will find place in the Indian statutes.
First of all, I want to say it's admirable that I can be in a panel with parliament members and have such a profound conversation on AI. I don't know if in Israel they are hearing me, but...
That's because there is a perception that politicians don't know anything about AI.
Exactly.
That's why she's amazed.
We are changing it here.
I want to share just if I have... In Israel, it's not a question... Sometimes when you talk about technology, there is the question of access to technology. You mentioned it. In Israel, we also have the issue of some population that doesn't want technology. They refuse to use it for their own, if it's a religious reason, no, usually it's religious reasons. We have a population that doesn't have smartphones, they don't have televisions at home. Now that's created a challenge for the government. When we want, Israel was in a war just until recently. If we want to communicate alarms or all kind of messages to the public, it is difficult. Now, when we go to Parliament, and I'm telling it to myself as someone who loves technology, endorse technology, and believe in innovation, we also, I think it's important, and I think that this summit sums it up well, that we'll think about those who doesn't have access and those who perhaps don't want it for ideological reason. In our run to innovation, we won't leave anyone behind. And that goes also to the harms of technology, like was mentioned, like with social media. So I think while we all love innovation and it sounds good, we should think about the effect it has on all of our community. At the end of the day, we don't want to leave anyone behind, or just with the risks of this technology. So I think it's an important discussion, and it's good that you are involving legislature in it.
Thank you. Okay.
On a lighter note, I just want to add something. So there was a journalist who asked uh, IT services founder way back in early 2000, 2001 or something, why did India do so well in IT services? The answer was from the founder, the politicians couldn't understand what was happening. That's why it did really well by the time, because sometimes when the bureaucrats, politicians understand too much, too many bricks are applied. So I think on the lighter note.
Yeah. It goes to the same thing we are talking, like, is regulating AI or AI regulation, how far can we go, or is it worth it? Like, that's the whole idea behind some of these topics. And irony, as I mentioned earlier, like some research showing that, oh, like it's helping a lot. At the same time, research which came out of MIT recently said that, okay, like using AI, like if you're dumping a lot of things on AI, your cognitive capacity is going down drastically, and which is part of risk. But I'll go with the risk. When I started, I was seeing everything from the lens of democracy. So I'll try to bring the risk on that part. I think this is one panel where none of you want AI to impersonate you very well. So what do you think about, very like straightforward question to you, Krishnan, like how do you think when deepfakes are coming in, the challenge is, okay, before that, I'll give you an example. I was doing a morning walk today in the park, and someone told, oh, like, you're from US, right? Like, my relative, what's happening in US? I told, oh, and then before I could say anything, she told me, she was, I think, 75 years old lady, and she told me, oh, it's all AI, right? Everything keeps coming on my phone. I don't believe in anything. And that was really terrible to hear, because this is where what I was thinking about in a democracy. If you are not believing on the things you are seeing, ultimately you do not believe anything. And how do you think it would, like, in context of democracy?
The context of democracy, I think there are enough social media revolutions that have happened. I think, at least in the Middle East, I think the Orange Revolution, those sort of it, where the social media was booming. I think there will be disruptions that will happen when the AI actually kicks up and majority of the users start using it. I think it will be better for the democracy going forward. But the crux of the matter is, again, right now there is a digital divide. I don't want to have a intelligence divide going forward. Say, for example, 10%, 8% of them can afford to have access to these. Rest of the 92% people don't have access to it. So what will happen then? What will be the effects then? Whether these 9 to 10% will try to control too much, whether we can give that level playing field for, that's our job as a legislators. So these are the questions that I think going forward we should be thinking. But for that, unless we don't have that intelligence divide, I don't think there'll be a lot of ill effects to the democracy. But only when we have that, these kind of observations will come, like everything is fake. I don't believe anything on the internet. But I think going forward, that sort of confidence, that sort of authentication going forward has to happen. And it will only happen when that divide is minimal rather than maximum. So I think it will be good, but there'll be a lot of disruption that will happen. It won't happen just like that.
Thank you. So what I heard from you the information which we are seeing as a whole, as a society, do you think there will be any direct impact on people going for vote? Or like they're saying, oh, for example, what I've heard from a couple of people saying, oh, like, oh, they all are the same. Like, how, like, I cannot choose. So democracy gives you the power to choose. And do you think if there is a collapse of trust, Raghav, do you have any comments? Sorry.
Collapse of trust between the government and the citizen.
No, collapse of trust between the information the people are seeing because of deepfakes.
Look, you see, every new technology, when it comes at the forefront, comes with its own challenges. Now, you can't really brush aside AI today simply because there are, some aspects of some misuse somewhere. Deepfakes being one of the most talked about, ills of AI in that sense. My sense is that the government and we as lawmakers, two of Indian lawmakers are there on this panel. I mean, we collectively need to, very clearly lay down as a country the accountability, safety, and the regulatory framework for AI. Now, simply because the government will get into of these generative AI LLMs. Until and unless India comes up with its own LLM, we must give access to the other LLMs that are there in the world, the few of them that I've just named, right? India will not be the first country to do so. There are several countries that are doing this. I believe UAE is doing this, Singapore is doing this. And as a result, there is a huge potential that the country is unlocking, whether it's for a trader, for a farmer, for a bureaucrat, for a politician, for a student, for a homemaker. In every facet and aspect of life, it comes to your aid and assistance, and it can be leveraged in a big way. So when it comes to purely the question of access, I think one of the solutions is that with the intervention of either private enterprise or government, we give free access. Now in India, I'll give you a small example. Those who are subscribers of a particular network provider, cell phone network provider, I won't name it, it's not right, but if you are a subscriber of that particular network provider, you get free access to one of the generative LLMs, free of cost, merely because that private enterprise has tied up with that particular company operating out of the Silicon Valley, and they're giving access to almost, 50-60% of their subscriber base. So with the intervention of private enterprise, it is already being accessed by many people. perhaps with the intervention of government, it'll be available for the rest of the people as well. And with that, I think we create a level playing field for everybody.
Please.
I think there's one parallel I can think of what Raghav said. You remember, I think 7 or 8 years back, or much beyond that, Facebook has come up with a new facility or new option for people in India, saying we want to give free internet. There was huge advertisements and everything. And when I went to US at the time, everyone was saying, why India is not taking this opportunity? Why are you not doing this? There was a lot of question in the Silicon Valley. This is a golden opportunity that Facebook is providing for free internet and everything. But at that time, Geo was not there, but still I was able to tell them, India can actually bring down the cost of the data. We have the scale. And we did it in the next 4 to 5 years. Our data charges are much lower than compared to anywhere else. That's the inference I can take, but at the same time, the parallel I can bring in this aspect with the AI is also the similar thing. Yes, we are giving access to, say, Claude or other LLMs that are there in the Indian market for free. Maybe in the next 2 years or so, Indian politicians will go and say, like how they give laptops as a promise for during the elections, they'll say we'll give this as a promise in the election also. But that's one way of solving it. But the most difficult way of solving it is how you can bring in Indian designed LLMs into play and make our data accessible on that, our people using those LLMs, our people generating tokens on that, our people actually adding value to those companies. This is an easier route where one network provider can provide a free access to certain cloud or something on their mobile. But how can we, as we mentioned earlier, we have only 34,000 GPUs. How can we manufacture or prepare those LLMs so that our people can generate that? So going forward, I think we can do it. That example is there where we brought down the data prices. Definitely we can do the same thing in AI space also, because there are a lot of youngsters here, talented ones. Only pushes that is needed is from the government side to actually add the infrastructure that is needed for this country.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. We'll get back to that later. Very quickly comment, this was a very bold statement, I would say, when we talk about talking about indigenous LLM, something like which we just recently saw Switzerland coming in on those lines, creating with another university, which I felt is one way to look at it. Going to Sarit, do you have any comments? We are two different democracies here, and we know that sometimes we club this AI governance as is the kind of overarching thing, but what are the specific things which you are looking things differently when we talk about AI governance and when we are talking in this space?
So just to go back also to your question about AI trust and democracy.
Okay.
And then I want to say that, and I think it was said here, and I want to repeat that regulation cannot solve everything. Regulation, it doesn't come instead of education, and education for critical thinking and for being more aware. We don't put a sign, we don't put a fence for kids before every danger. We educate them to be aware of their surrounding and to be careful. So I do think we need to regulate AI, but I think we cannot, there is a certain limit, and I think, like you said, of what we can and should regulate. And when I sorry, the microphone is augmenting me at the moment. When I went to school and learned English, we had the WH questions, right? And that's the question when you think about regulating AI, is you have to ask yourself, what do you regulate? The European decided to regulate the technology as a whole. They have a law on artificial intelligence. I think it's the first law that I know that regulates technology, not its specific uses, not from its harms. So saying that I do a law just for artificial intelligence it's a question whether that's the way to regulate technology. There's the question of when. Is the time right to regulate technology now, right? When the European introduced the law to Parliament, it was 2019. Think about how much AI involved since. And when you're doing a law, it's so, well, I don't know in India, but in Israel, when you do a law, it's really hard to go back to Parliament and change it. So I think we need to regulate AI when we know what we want to regulate, and do it in the sweet spot of the timing when the technology is mature enough, but it's not too late. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why do we want to regulate AI? Because I think just to say we want to regulate AI because it's something new and novel and we don't know it is not enough. We have to understand specifically what in AI needs to be regulated, whether it's the transparency that we're using AI, whether if it's a component in something very structural that we want to observe it better. But I think, and I believe that that in Israel at least, the time has not come there, but I think each regulator should see AI in its own domain and make sure that it's used in a responsible manner and that the public is not getting hurt, but getting the opportunities of it, and introduce practical tool to make AI safer. The time for regulation will come, but we should be very, very, I think, realistic about what we can achieve through regulation. It's not going to replace what we have to do in other domains in order to make AI safer.
I think it's,
Thank you.
It's just to supplement what she said. It's somewhat similar to freedom of expression and speech. Now, Article 19 of the Indian Constitution gives you freedom of expression and speech, right? It's a right that's been fundamental right given to all Indians. However, within the same article in the Constitution, there are certain, I think 3 or 4 constitutional safeguards that your speech must not tantamount to treason. It must, so there are 3-4 constitutional safeguards that are inbuilt in that. So similarly, we must be very careful when it comes to regulation of AI, that what we can regulate and should regulate, and what we must not regulate and we should not regulate.
Very good. So we are in the last leg. We have less than 5 minutes left. I wanted to touch base on, like, we spoke about data, we spoke about sovereign AI. Something which I would like to bring here, like which not many people would know, that every 14 days one language vanishes. And when it vanishes, it takes away all the collective knowledge and wisdom of that community with it. I was just wondering, this could be an infrastructure problem, this could be this could be an technology problem, but I would love to hear very quickly, who do you think should build infrastructure like that so that we do not miss on this human wisdom which has been developed since many decades? So please.
I think more than building the infrastructure, I think we need to take a step back. As I mentioned earlier about social media, if we start speaking, if we start interacting, I think there's a lot of things that can flourish. But on the other side, yes, there is technology that is available. Definitely, we need to use it. But as I mentioned, as you were asking me earlier, how will it create the democracy, how it will be in the next 10 years and everything. Again, I come to the same point here. When I go to my constituency, which is having urban and rural, I speak to the rural constituents. I feel they are much more informed because they have multiple sources of information that is coming in. They just don't rely on the WhatsApp, they don't rely on the newspaper, but they actually sit down and have a discussion that happens in the villages and everything. And when I go there, they go and sit and have a conversation that happens. But when I go to the urban constituents, their only source of information is either your phone or your TV or some source that's telling you where it's actually killing your intuition because someone is actually feeding it into your head. So again, coming to the languages thing or anything that needs to be saved, there'll be technology that will be available for that to happen. But at the same time, that interactions, that sort of parallel things has to happen. Only then it can survive, I think.
Thank you. Raghav, sorry. Any quick comment? Please go ahead.
I want to tell you that in Israel we speak Hebrew. Not a lot of people in the world speak Hebrew. There's a lot of people pray in Hebrew, Jewish people around the world, but they don't speak Hebrew. 10 million people speak Hebrew. And we were afraid that when LLMs that are developed elsewhere are developed, they will ignore the knowledge in Hebrew. We were afraid that Israelis will not have good enough LLMs that they can use in Hebrew. So I don't have a solution, but I can say that the government, maybe they should take a step back, but in Israel they also supported companies that worked on LLM in Hebrew. So the Hebrew language will be, the knowledge made in Hebrew will be part of the big LLMs, that's for one, and that will have also our own local LLM, and I think it was a great initiative to preserve the language and the knowledge in it. So that's one idea to do.
Okay.
I think the question that you asked is more pertinent in the Indian context. I mean, Israel in that sense would have 1, 2, 3, at max 4, 5 languages that are prevalent largely. India, on the other hand, has several languages. I mean, I think about 22, 24 languages are there, which are mentioned in within our constitutional scheme of things. And beyond that as well, there are so many different languages, cultures, so on and so forth. So therefore, this question is very relevant in the Indian context, and I strongly feel about this. I strongly feel about this because AI, when we talk about this, will lead to job displacement, as we all say and feel and are perhaps even seeing in some parts of the industry. But AI can potentially also lead to not just job displacement, but knowledge displacement. Now, to very simply place this argument, anything that is not digitized or not searchable, is not codified, is not something that AI's compute brain or compute capability will apply itself to. In India, you have civilizational wisdom, you have oral traditions, you have community do's and don'ts, you have civilizational culture that has been flowing through generation to generation, and a lot of this exists within families, within communities, is not codified, is not written, is not digitized. So therefore AI perhaps will not apply itself to this huge knowledge bank, and as a result the fear is that when we are building AI models for the future, as we are in this day and age, we are building those future models based on a fraction of human knowledge and human intelligence. So therefore, we must find ways to augment the knowledge, to digitize the knowledge. I mean, I'm given to understand the Indian government is doing a separate AI mission and programs like Bhashini, where they're trying to codify and digitize several regional languages, and I think that is something which is of utmost importance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We ran a little bit over time, but this... Sorry.
I would request our Director of Future Shift Labs to kindly felicitate our esteemed panel.
I'll take a separate one. No. You've given me 2. Yeah. I'll present one on behalf of India.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for attending.